The EU has warned it will tighten rules on exports of COVID vaccines amid a row of AstraZeneca over a cut in planned supplies to the 27-member bloc. Health Commissioner of the EU said it will take any action required to protect its citizens. Last week, AstraZeneca told the EU it was falling behind on its supply target because of production problems. The EU has been criticized for the slow rollout of the vaccines, which it buys on behalf of all member states. The roll could also affect supplies to the UK of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine developed by the US and Germany. Pfizer's Belgian planned supplies to the UK. The UK government said it was in close contact with vaccine suppliers. Moderna Incorporated said on Monday it believes its COVID-19 vaccine will work against new variants found in Britain and South Africa. The company said in a news release it found no reduction in the antibody response against the variant found in Britain. Against the South African variant, it found a reduced response but still believed its two-dose regimen would provide protection. The emergence of new variants in Britain, South Africa and Brazil has created some concern that mutations in the virus may make vaccines less effective. Moderna said it is looking at whether a booster shot could be made available in the future if evidence were to emerge that protections declined. Moderna said it expects its current vaccine will remain protective for at least a year after completing the two-dose course, while a third dose is not expected until at least 6 months after that course is finished. Pfizer and BioNTech have also said tests showed their vaccine is effective against the variant found in Britain, but have not yet disclosed results against the South African variant. The variant first found in Britain has caused a massive surge in cases there and has also been found in more than a dozen US states. US public health officials expect it to be the dominant variant in the United States within 6 weeks.
Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte is set to hand in his resignation on Tuesday, following criticism of his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. More than 85,000 Italians have died with COVID-19. Mr. Conte hopes to be given a mandate by the president to form a stronger government after losing his majority in the Senate. Should he fail to do so, the task could fall to someone else, and failing that, fresh elections will be held. Mr. Conte, who has been Prime Minister since 2018, survived a vote of confidence in the lower house, the Chamber of Deputies, last week. The vote was called after former PM Matteo Renzi pulled his small Italia Viva party out of the coalition and said he would only return if Mr. Conte accepted a list of demands. Shortly before Mr. Conte's resignation, the anti-establishment five-star movement MSS said it would remain at Conte's side. His resignation comes ahead of a vote on judicial reforms later this week that MPs in his coalition warn he would lose. Mr. Conte, an independent technocrat, has led two very different successive governments. For 15 months, he headed a coalition between MSS and the far-right League, whose leader Matteo Salvini pulled out in a failed bid to force elections. Since then, he has presided over a center-left coalition, of which MSS and the Democratic Party have been the main components.
Janet Yellen has been confirmed as the first ever female U.S. Treasury Secretary in a Senate vote. Ms. Yellen, who headed the U.S. Central Bank from 2014 to 2018, earlier won bipartisan support from members of the Senate Finance Committee. She will be responsible for guiding the Biden administration's economic response to the pandemic. The U.S. is struggling to rebound economically from the hit caused by the coronavirus pandemic. At her confirmation hearing on 19th January, Ms. Yellen urged Congress to approve trillions more in pandemic relief and economic stimulus, saying that lawmakers should act big without worrying about national debt. In response, Republican senators warned the former Federal Reserve head this was not the time for a laundry list of liberal reforms. Ms. Yellen disagreed, highlighting the fact that many families whose incomes have fallen were not reached by jobless programs. She argued that plans to raise taxes must be seen in the context of financing bigger investments necessary to make the US economy competitive.
Police arrested at least 70 people after rioting broke out for a third night around the Netherlands on Monday, after weekend protests that were initially linked to dissent over a government decision to implement a nighttime curfew.
It's completely strange that things are getting out of hand. People are losing their mind. I can imagine it in some way, but we all have to deal with the same situation here. And I think that we have to remain calm. And I think the government is doing a great thing, keeping things under control and making for all of us as soon to be getting outside as soon as possible we can.
But the motivation behind vandalism and other incidents Monday in cities ranging from Rotterdam and Amsterdam to smaller centers was no longer clear, with rioters overwhelmingly in their teens. The curfew, the first in the country since World War II, was imposed after the National Institute for Health warned a new wave of infections is on its way due to the British variant of COVID-19.
I think we should be allowed to live our lives. To be honest, I think there is a virus out there, but I don't think the world should be shut down for it. I think we should just be. It can be contained, and I think we should be allowed to live our lives, and all the shops should be open. I think the people should just open up and live our lives. That's my honest opinion.
Some 4,129 new cases were reported on Monday, the lowest number since December 1st. Police said hundreds had been detained over the weekend as rioters threw rocks and, in one case, knives at police and burned down a COVID-19 testing station.
Well, yeah, the lockdown, the curfew, everything that's going on, and especially all the riots here in the Netherlands at the moment. Well, yeah, it feels a bit unreal, actually. It feels a bit unreal, like a bad movie.
Police said they issued more than 5,700 fines for breaking the curfew. 4 times as many jobs were lost last year due to the coronavirus pandemic as during the worst part of the global financial crisis in 2009. The International Labour Organization estimated that the restrictions on businesses and public life destroyed 8.8% of all work hours around the world last year. That is equivalent to 255 million full-time jobs, quadruple the impact of the financial crisis over a decade ago. ILO Director General Guy Ryder said the fallout was almost equally split between reduced work hours and unprecedented job losses. The United Nations agency noted that most people who lost work stopped looking for a job altogether, likely because of restrictions on businesses that depend on face-to-face interactions. The drop in work translates to a loss of $3.7 trillion in income globally, what Ryder called an extraordinary figure, with women and young people taking the biggest hits. The ILO report expects a bounce back in jobs in the second half of the year, but that depends on the reduction in coronavirus infections and the rollout of vaccines. Currently, infections are rising or remain stubbornly high in many countries, and vaccine distribution is still slow overall.
I'm pleased to be able to say that we're continuing to make swift progress as we prepare to vaccinate New Zealanders against the virus, while also maintaining our very strong commitment to ensuring vaccines are safe and effective. We can do both in a timely way, and we are.
New Zealand may approve a COVID-19 vaccine next week, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said on Tuesday, a day after the country confirmed its first case of the new coronavirus in the community in months.
We still expect our regulatory approval process to be complete before vaccines are ready to be dispatched to New Zealand. This means we expect there won't be any hold-up, and we will be able to take delivery of our first batch of vaccines as soon as Pfizer is able to send them. Our first focus will be vaccinating our border and managed isolation and quarantine workforce and their close contacts. Once the vaccine arrives in New Zealand, we expect to be able to complete vaccinating this group within 2 to 3 weeks.
The recent community case in a woman who returned to New Zealand on December 30 and had tested positive for the South African strain of the virus after leaving a 2-week mandatory quarantine. This led Australia to immediately suspend a travel bubble with New Zealand for 72 hours.
Ultimately, it is a decision for Australia, and I need to acknowledge that. But I certainly shared my view that this was a situation that was well under control, that we have had experiences in New Zealand with these situations in the past, and that actually, if we're going to run a trans-Tasman arrangement, we need to be able to manage situations like this.
Pressure has been mounting on Ardern's government to vaccinate the population, but New Zealand has repeatedly said the process will not start for months. A tough lockdown and geographical isolation helped the country of 5 million virtually eliminate the novel coronavirus within its borders. New Zealand has had only 1,927 confirmed cases. But with the pandemic raging globally, more people are returning with infections, including the new variants, raising concerns the virus may spread in the community again.